So Kartik, welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast studio here live at CommerceNext. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you, Steve and Michael, for inviting me here.
Well, we're happy to, and we're going to get to this. You did a really interesting talk on stage that we'll, I guess, unpack, as the kids like to say. But before we get into that, maybe you could just tell our audience a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Yes, of course. So I'm Kartik Hosanagar. I'm a professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, where I'm also the co-director of our AI Center. And outside of that, I am a co-founder of Bliss Labs, which is a currently still in stealth applied AI company, but we're
not after this podcast.
Yeah, not after this podcast. Yes, that's true. But we're broadly focused on agentic commerce and AI search. And then outside of that, I've previously founded a couple companies and written a book called A Human's Guide to Machine Intelligence.
Excellent. So, as I said, we're getting you not exactly the minute you came off stage. It was a little bit earlier in the day, but the topic of your talk was when AI becomes your customer. Could you just, obviously we're not going to do the whole thing here, but could you just give us a sense for why did you pick that topic? What was kind of the main series of points you were trying to make?
Yeah, so couple reasons why I chose it. I think, the point I started with is that I believe that the biggest shift in retail happening right now is not that there's a new technology or there's a new tool or even a new channel for product discovery, but it is that you have a new customer. And the reason I brought that up is that a lot of people currently think about AI as another channel through which they can reach their customers. And I think that's certainly true, but it is dangerous because it's incomplete. And when you think about it as a channel, you're kind of missing something very important that could happen. And that is that these systems are not just a means through which your customers are going to come to you, but they're going to be making more and more decisions on behalf of the customers. Mm-hmm. And when they are making decisions actively, you should think of them like the customer. You should think about, how do you influence them? All of those things. And when you think about them as a channel, you're not thinking about them much more than our regular customers are going to come through this channel.
Yeah.
And the other point I'll quickly make is that it's a bit like, when the movie studios thought about Netflix and the streamers as another distribution channel versus a full system level shift that was going to change over the next several years, what got made by whom and who gets to see it. And that's the kind of change coming up.
So is that, just to kind of tease this out a little bit, it's not uncommon for people now to think about, when they realize that Google, Meta were, basically toll booth operators, right? You were traveling kind of on their highway, but then they eventually figured out how to extract more money. It's not exactly what you're saying. There's also this whole thing about disintermediation. So how does that touch on, or does it touch on what you're talking about?
So it touches in one way, and that wasn't my main point, but the manner in which it does touch is that if these systems are making more and more decisions on behalf of the customer and also influencing the customer's decision in a big way, it increases the power they have in this value chain.
Yeah.
And so there is certainly a shift in how much more they can control systems. We've already seen ChatGPT attempt or OpenAI attempt to roll out instant checkout where even the checkout would happen on their platform. It didn't quite work out, but it gives you a sense for the kind of ambition they can have if they're controlling the customer's discovery and decision making here.
Sure. So broadly speaking, and obviously things are changing quite quickly, but when you think about how agentic AI, I guess in particular, like what behaviors does it tend to reward or maybe downscore, and how does trust between a retailer and their end consumer change by virtue of that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I think the short answer is we know very little today about how you persuade
Nobody knows
agents.
nothing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we've now have decades of research on how people make decisions. We know $9.99 is not the same as $10. We know social proof matters. You know, scarcity and, oh, we're running out of stock. That makes a difference. Now, do all these things work with AI? We don't know. We know how color and copy matter. How do they work with AI? We don't know. We know AI is going to have its own biases, its own framing effects. But in fact, my main point is that we are lacking the equivalent of a marketing science for AI. And that's where both researchers and practitioners will have to focus and run lots of experiments to figure out how or why is the AI system recommending one brand versus the other and things like that. So we learn it over time. So my short answer is, I don't know. I could hypothesize a few things, and we've seen a few things. We know, for example, what a large language model thinks about a brand is influenced partly by what the brand puts out there, but it also is influenced by what other companies, other media outlets, as well as community sites like Reddit and others are discussing about the brand. And so all of that matters. But what drives trust in an AI system? How do you influence the AI system? We don't know today. And that's where I would really recommend your listeners, those in retail, those in branding and so on, to be really thinking about, because if you understand that before everyone else, that's your gold mine.
Yeah.
That's your superpower for sure.
Let's broaden the lens a little bit and talk about the risks and the costs behind AI. Satya Nadella had a pretty bracing statement this week, basically coming out and saying, we just can't have all these companies leading AI and it was sucking up the world, all the oxygen in the world. And as part of his message, he was saying that, companies are realizing that all this, they're starting to see the costs go up and up and up. It's not so free. It's kind of like Uber in the early days, right? It's a cheap ride. Now it's not cheap anymore. Those days are long gone. So I think about the risks to companies and I think about the escalating costs. How do you think about it?
Yeah, I think those are good points. I think as far as Satya Nadella's comment, it's possible that he meant everything he said. But it's also possible that they're worried about losing
their market
share to these AI labs.
Well, of course, it's funny because he was the biggest funder, one of the bigger funders behind,
behind
Chat.
OpenAI, and then of course their relationship went south. Who knows
what he's really thinking?
Yeah, exactly. But I will say that yes, costs are a big driver, and a lot of companies have been telling their employees, "Look, we need to embrace AI. We need to push on AI," and a strategy that many on Twitter are calling token maxing, which is the idea that we will even measure employees based on how many tokens you're consuming as a way to say, hey, you're AI forward.
Yeah.
But if AI is showing that your AI forward is a matter of just consuming more tokens, that's a race to the bottom because
maybe they're processing Bitcoin or something. I mean, maybe they're just
exactly. Who knows what? Right?
I'm starting to hit thresholds, and I don't use it anywhere near like big retailers do. I'm starting to hit limits and thresholds too. Now, I want to change tacks a little bit. In where I'm from in Canada, there's a story about BMW and a customer who got an offer from a BMW chatbot. That he tried to cash in and they reneged on it and said, we never made that, the AI made that. Now you've got your own example about a men's wallet and gifting. Talk about why you use that as an example and what's going on there.
Yeah, so I use the example of direct-to-consumer men's wallet company, Ridge. And late last fall in October, they were interested in assessing their brand's visibility in ChatGPT. And of course, if you search for best men's wallet, best men's minimalist wallet, they would show up. But the real search for them was best gifts for men, because that's how their customers, wives, sisters, and so on would find gift for my brother, gift for my husband, and so on. And when they did that search, they were almost never showing up. First of all, if a wallet brand was listed in that answer, it was not them. And so that worried them. And then, I worked with them a little bit. We tried a bunch of different strategies. In 3 weeks, they went from not showing up to being the main brand that shows up as the main wallet recommendation that shows up when you search for gifts for men. And that happened in just 3 weeks. But at the same time, what also happened was that the LLM, ChatGPT, was sharing some information about promotions that they were offering, except that it was not an actual promotion that they were offering, and it was either a hallucination or something that ChatGPT picked up from Reddit or wherever. So for me, it was a great example of both the opportunity and the risks here, where they went in just 3 weeks from being completely invisible to being famous, being the default wallet brand, and also having their brand message be hijacked by a hallucinating LLM or a community information that was taken in here. So I thought that was an interesting way to present the
risks and opportunities.
Risks and opportunities, exactly.
That was a great story. What a time to be alive, huh? Let's get a little bit strategic. And I was really interested when I saw some of the stuff you're going to be speaking about, because I will say you're very aligned with my thinking, so it must be right. But you argue, so I've talked about it as the difference between buying and shopping, errands and experience is a little bit different than you talk about it as kind of two viable strategies, efficiency or meaning. Can you just tell us a little bit more about how you see that and therefore what should retailers be doing?
Yeah, so I was mentioning at a strategic level, retailers and brands should be thinking about a very clear dichotomy here. One is what I call an efficiency play, which is that an AI system is going to drive a lot of decision making. And for a customer, it's, you need to get a job done. And you're kind of saying, okay, if an AI can get most of it done for me, fine, let it do it for me. And if so, then your strategy as a brand has to be, how do we make sure our information is accessible, readable in the right format where AI can ingest it? How do I make sure I can influence that AI system and understand what drives AI recommendations and so on? And the challenge with this is that it's going to be a mix of data, technology, marketing. So it's a multidisciplinary play at a time where within retail companies, you have people claiming, this is my turf, this is my turf. They have to break those boundaries and come together. Now, the other strategy is a meaning play, where you can really deliver to the customer an experience that is worth showing up for. And so over here, the point is, even if an AI system can do a lot of the work for you, I still want to show up and I want to shop, because that shopping experience is really enjoyable, and there's product categories like that.
Yeah.
And that requires craft and branding and so on. And that's the other play.
Sure.
And I think the dangerous middle ground is trying to be in between and trying to do both.
Right. Do you see any room, because I'm breaking a little bit of news here, but I'm working on a new book that's, kind of very much in this direction. And one of the things I've been thinking about, I call it sort of jobs versus joys, but there's a lot of different words. But anyway, 10 years ago, I talked about the collapse of the unremarkable middle and the bifurcation that was going on in retail. And it seems like this is causing it even maybe more to polarize. But as I started to think about some of the stuff you're talking about, there is a role, I think, for a little bit of meaning, as I frame it, sort of joy. But when you go to Costco, for example, you're mostly going to get a job done. But there's aspects of fun or meaning, or Trader Joe's is maybe a bigger example, because you're sort of the tribe, but so there's this emotional side to it, and I wonder whether it's not quite so black and white, but particularly from the context of AI, I mean, that's a little easier to imagine, just going into a store and feeling it. It's not so much starting with an agent or using AI to shop. Any nuance you'd give to that?
Yeah, I like those examples. And I think, I enjoy going to Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, and there is something interesting about coming in and even discovering some new items they've added in there. And, there's all of that stuff. But I think that's an interesting example where you curate and create a nice experience worth showing up for. But I'll give you another example, and I won't name the company. I was just talking to somebody right after my talk, and this person is at a telecom company. They sell internet access, and they have stores where you can go in and sign up for internet access, like your home broadband and so on. There's many companies, Verizon, AT&T, Charter, Comcast, and so on. Now, we were chatting about it, and I was really kind of telling her, give me a reason to show up at your store.
Right.
Why am I showing up? because there's really no joy I get from walking into one of these stores and kind of discussing like my internet plan. You give me the information, I'll sign up online, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's like, to me, a really good contrast. So if you are going to invest in retail and invest in physical retail, I mean, and you're going to invest in experiences, like really double down on that and deliver wow with that experience.
Sure. Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't matter. And you brought up joy. What did you call it? Joy versus jobs?
Yeah. Just sort of errands versus experience, more emotional experiences. Yeah.
So here's what's interesting about it, that in the past, there might have been certain things that were errands and certain things that were experiences, to use your term. But I had no choice. I had to show up for both.
Right.
But today, if something's an errand, I can outsource a big chunk of it to AI.
Yeah.
And I can focus on what's the experience. It's like meals. I'll look forward to a special dinner at a restaurant with a great chef. But then there are other things where I'll DoorDash it.
Sure.
And it's a means to an end.
Right.
And so you've got to be clear, if you're a restaurant, am I the experience you want to show up for, and am I the DoorDash restaurant?
Right. Do you feel, and I'll pass it over to Michael, but do you, I know some of the people, you're probably familiar with the book Filter World, there's this idea that, kind of mindless capitalism and, all the tech giants and everything, there's a sort of inexorable pull towards the optimization efficiency side. And then, there's this counter narrative of, well, don't lose sight of the human, or don't lose sight of what physical stores do better than an agent, or just even e-commerce, right? It's not even an pre-agentic world. Had some of the same kind of conversations. Do you think that's true, that there's a kind of bias towards efficiency because of the way companies are run, and it's easier to do the productivity thing than to maybe take the risk to create that wow experience, or create an environment that you can't quantify? Why is there a bar? Why is there, climbing wall? Those kinds of things. Is that what you find, I guess, from your academic lens, or just your general experience?
Yeah, I mean, even before the academic lens, I'll give you an anecdote. I was in Portugal last week, and one of the things I was noticing, my wife and I were like, wow, everything is slow. And initially we're like, we're not moving fast. We're not getting out of this place fast. And so we're like, we're always rushing in. And that's the American way. We're just like, it's all efficiency here. But the whole world is not like that. It's a very American thing.
Right.
And you go to Europe and you're like, there's a different way to live. And to breathe through things and experience things and so on. I also think there's a lot of heterogeneity in this, the productivity play, based on people. Some people prefer one way, some people prefer others. So even within a product category, there's scope for brands who are focused on the efficiency play, and there's room for brands who are focused on the experience play.
Yeah.
And it's also, there's heterogeneity by product category. So how does this efficiency focus play out in groceries versus, say, shopping for clothing versus shopping for jewelry or luxury watches?
Luxury handbag or something.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all of this. I think there's room for multiple strategies, but be clear on your strategy.
Right. Pick a lane, right?
Yeah, pick a lane,
I want to take you back to some of those comments you made about earlier on, very provocative, about scarcity and the 99-cent versus the rounded up dollars. All the things that were part of a retailer's persuasion book seem to be a different set of elements around AI. You kind of hinted at it. You didn't reveal any secrets, but when you work for the wallet company, you were able to find a way to persuade or inform the AIs. Talk about what retailers should be thinking about and how to persuade AIs and change that dynamic, or understand the psychology a bit different.
Yeah, so I will share a little bit on how to approach it rather than this is what works with AI, because it's too early to say this is what works with AI. So how to approach it is that the nice opportunity is these AI systems are probable, meaning you can probe these systems and you can ask counterfactuals on what will happen if I change this or that. A simple thing you could yourself do is, create two versions of a page, two different products, your product, your competitor's product, and create that and kind of say, hey, ChatGPT, here's information on product A, here's information on product B, which one would you prefer and why, and so on, and it'll give you a recommendation. And then you can ask, then you can make changes and see if the recommendation changes, and you're describing your product differently, you're changing your price, and you're seeing what it's doing to the recommendation. But that's a simple experiment you do, but a more, I guess, a research-backed approach would be that it's possible today for you to create simulation sandboxes where you can create a digital twin or a replica of an LLM like ChatGPT or Gemini. And then you can ask, if you have a good simulator, where if you ask the question to your simulator, the answer resembles what you would get with the actual LLM, you can now run all kinds of experiments where you can release AI agents and set them free and have AI agents create 1,000 variations of your website. And for every variation, ask the same question and see how the AI answer is changing. And before you know it, instead of trying something and then waiting 6 to 8 weeks to see how the AI answer changes and find out it didn't work, now you try your next strategy, wait for 6 to 8 weeks and do this for a long period of time. You can do this in simulation, get the answer in a day, and now you've pre-tested 100 strategies, found the 3 that works, and you roll it out. And that's what we did with these other brands. And that's how you get to, instead of trying and then waiting and crossing your fingers and hope something works, all of that is happening in the simulation. The strategy you deploy has been pre-tested, and so there's a 90% chance it works. And that's what happened here. And sometimes it's silly things. I mean, literally, we found that you present information in a table format instead of usual essay format. LLM suddenly seem to take it very seriously if you provide it in a table format. And some of it is, it's maybe structuring the data differently. It's providing information.
Is a shortcut to do, not a shortcut's the wrong word, but is a halfway mark. Having the LLMs judge 2 things, it will pick one. Could you just ask it why it picked that one? Does that work?
It doesn't, because LLMs make stuff up. And so...
and they're very obsequious. Oh, that was such a great question.
Yeah, that's right.
You're the smartest. I couldn't pick, but I just...
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You ask it, why did you pick something? It's going to make up an answer and say, here's why I picked this. And you will either believe it or you'll ask a question, but then what about this other thing? It'll say, oh, you're right.
Oh, you're right. I totally
right.
forgot that.
Yeah.
I need to be truthful. There's one of those ridiculous
Yeah, so I think the better way to do this is actually run the experiment.
And
so
build
one of my
that digital
PhD
twin.
students,
Yeah,
one of my PhD students is doing that, where we just keep changing things and keep asking the LLM the same question. And suddenly you see, when I change the image this way, the answer suddenly changed. Or when I change the metadata in this following manner, the answers just changed. And now you know the real answer versus asking the LLM, which is a bullshitting genius.
So fun. Let's talk about last question. I'll pass the mic back to Steve. I want to understand, there's some brands that really, sometimes it's said they buy the story before the product. They really focus on the meaning behind them, the essence. I can think of like a Yeti, for example. You're really buying the outdoors, you're buying whatever. There's all kinds of other examples. Tecovas is like that. You're buying experience. Not that we like to mention Tecovas 100 times, but they were on the stage, so they're top of mind for me. But anyway, in the context of these agents, how do brands think about being discovered as an experience in a fairly algorithmic world?
Yeah, I think if you actually break it down, what's going on with a lot of these agents is when you ask them a question, there's a bunch of things that influence their answers. One of it is that they actually go use search tools, because whenever they were trained, that was 6 months ago, 5 months ago, that data is old. So they use search tools to fetch new information. So some people who say SEO is dead, I say it's not dead. Its relevance has changed and it's kind of different, because the AI systems are now using search tools. But not earlier, you would only focus on Google, but now only Gemini uses Google.
Right.
ChatGPT uses a different search engine. Claude uses a different search engine. So first it is, it's first breaking down, if I ask a certain question, what is the LLM doing? What search tools are those LLMs using? What pages are retrieved? Then it's based on how are you represented in the training data. So all of these things start to matter. But the nice thing is it's an algorithmic system that you can break down into subcomponents and ask, where am I losing this battle? And so that's why I kind of feel that This is something you bring some real science to it. You can actually break down and figure out, why am I not winning this? And what needs to happen for me to win this?
It's a fascinating perspective.
Yeah. Well, you've dropped a lot of knowledge, which is of course what we want. Before we let you go, though, I also wanted to just see if you might spend a minute or two, because in addition to being faculty at Wharton, you're an entrepreneur. You have this, you mentioned it at the outset, a company called Bliss in stealth mode. Can you share a little bit, even though it's stealthy, a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, it's funny, we haven't yet launched. Part of the reason is we haven't fully finalized the name we'll be launching with. So we've got two names.
Bliss-ish.
Bliss-ish. So we've got two names, Bliss Labs and then Bodium Labs. We're sorting through trademark for each of them.
Have you asked ChatGPT which is the better?
Oh, I should, but then it's going to BS its way to the answer, so I don't know. But yeah, what we're doing, really what motivated us to start the company was that, as we just discussed, AI is already driving a lot of product and discovery and research for consumers. And over time, it's going to have even more impact. But everything we see in this space right now, people have different terms for it. Some call it generative engine optimization. Some focus on agentic commerce. But everything we see in this space, we feel is not rigorous or science-based. So a lot of the solutions here, for example, will do things like, okay, let me guess what your customers might type into ChatGPT. Let me send those questions to ChatGPT. Let's see if your brand shows up or not show up, and we'll present the analytics to you. Okay, so what am I supposed to do with the data? What action should I take? No one knows. So the typical answer is, why don't you try publishing more blog posts? And hopefully one of those posts might change the AI answer.
Update your Wikipedia page.
Yeah, update your Wikipedia. Push more blog posts. And hopefully something changes. It's a bit like throwing spaghetti on the wall and hoping something sticks. And so what we wanted to, my co-founder was at Google DeepMind just before this. I was I'm still at the Wharton School. Our research was looking at the fact that, as we just discussed, you can actually break these AI systems down into subcomponents, figure out why the answers are what they are. And if you can actually build those simulations that I mentioned, you can run counterfactuals. What by that I mean, is there a different website or a different web copy or a different social media presence of mine where suddenly I start to win? And the analogy I provide is, I don't know if you guys remember this, I think it was the Avengers movie where the multiverse one, where they're losing, and then this person shows them, hey, there's all these different universes, and here's one you're actually winning. And let's focus, let's go there. And so that's what we do. We simulate thousands of different universes and tell you this is the one where you're winning, and then you can go in that direction. So it's bringing actionability to a lot of this stuff.
Well, I guess, are we living in a simulation or are we living in a Marvel movie? More and more, it sounds like we're living in a Marvel movie. Last question, and I guess it's kind of a tough question because you've been so generous with your time and insights, is for the retailers listening, what's the one or two or three things they need to prioritize or think about in this rapidly changing world? I mean, you've given them lots of great ideas to get their arms around the digital twin idea, but is there any, in a succinct kind of way, 1, 2, 3, you got to do these three things. If you don't do these three things, you're gonna really fall behind.
Yeah, I would say a couple things about the attitude you need to bring in here, and then maybe one thing on tooling or resources here. The attitude is important because when things are changing that fast, I think you have to, first of all, be way more curious than in regular times. You've also got to be way more experimental than in regular times. And you've also got to be way more collaborative than regular times. And so I think that's the attitude that I'd really advocate your listeners to, which is be more curious, try more things, try things internally with vendors, be open to experiments, because this is a time of change and the learning you will get from trying many things is going to be great. And be collaborative with other people within the company. I just talked earlier about how sometimes there are silos and it's like, oh no, this is our domain. But what's the point of it being your domain if you don't know the answer and we're all going to sync together with it? How do we collaborate? How does marketing collaborate with the data science team, with the technology team? How do we all come together and not say, this is my turf, this is your turf? So I think those are the attitude kinds of things I would say.
It's fascinating because if you think about the COVID era of retail, it built a lot of resilience.
Yes.
Whereas this AI area of retail, or era of retail, is building that curiosity and experimentation. I mean, it is all a little bit exhausting, though, right? I mean, to be always curious, always trying more. But with your advice that you've given us today, I think it's very, very helpful to everybody trying to figure it out. So thanks again for joining Steve and I in the CommerceNext podcasting studio. I really appreciate your time, and wish you continued success on the new startup and the work you do.
Thank you both for having me. Really enjoyed being here.